The first thing Shen Yuan felt after entering the cultivation world was a sword cutting into his neck. Cold rain struck his face. Mud filled his mouth. 3 masked cultivators stood around him in a narrow mountain ravine, their dark robes carrying no sect insignia. The tallest assassin pressed the blade harder and told him he should have remained unconscious. Only moments earlier, Shen Yuan had been an ordinary man from another world. Then memories belonging to this body had poured into his mind. This Shen Yuan was 26 years old, the youngest elder of the Cloud Sword sect and the weakest. His cultivation had remained at the 3rd stage of spirit gathering for 6 years. His master was dead. His peak was nearly abandoned. His former disciples had transferred to richer branches. Someone had poisoned him, thrown him into Corpse Ravine, and hired killers to make certain he never returned. The assassin raised his sword. A stone struck the side of his mask. A thin 16-year-old boy stood beneath the trees. His gray servant robe was torn, his black hair was soaked by rain, and his left arm hung stiffly because of an old injury. He held a broken branch in his right hand. "Leave Elder Shen alone." The killers laughed. Shen Yuan recognized the boy from the body's memories. His name was Qin Rui, a servant assigned to Ashfall Peak. Every elder had rejected him because spiritual energy vanished whenever it entered his body. The sect healers called his meridians malformed and his future worthless. The nearest assassin advanced. Qin Rui trembled, but he did not run. A cold voice sounded inside Shen Yuan's mind. Qualified disciple detected. Hundredfold Return System ready. When a registered disciple genuinely learns ABSORBS, REFINES, or benefits from something granted by the host will receive a return worth exactly 100 times the original benefit. False transactions and repeated exploitation will not be recognized. Accept Qin Rui as a disciple. Shen Yuan answered yes. The assassin lunged at Qin Rui. Shen Yuan had too little strength to stop him directly, so he taught instead. Move your right foot half a step backward, lower the branch, do not watch the blade, watch his chest. Qin Rui obeyed. The assassin's right shoulder shifted before the sword moved. Qin Rui stepped diagonally, letting the blade pass beside his ribs. At Shen Yuan's command, he turned his wrist and struck beneath the attacker's elbow. The man's arm went numb and his sword dropped into the mud. Disciple Qin Rui has learned the basic deflection step. Hundredfold Return activated. Reward 100 Shadow Counterstep, complete first layer. Hundreds of movement patterns entered Shen Yuan's mind. He suddenly understood how to cross an enemy's blind angle, redirect a charge, and move through overlapping attacks with almost no wasted energy. The other 2 assassins rushed him. Shen Yuan shifted half a step, pulled the first attacker into the path of the second, and made one assassin stab the other through the chest. He drove his elbow into the survivor's jaw, caught a falling sword, and cut the man's leg. The tallest killer released the pressure of a 6th-stage spirit-gathering cultivator. He slashed at Shen Yuan's head. Shen Yuan stepped inside the arc. The edge cut his shoulder but missed his neck. He trapped the weapon arm, stabbed the assassin's thigh, and moved behind him with the 100 Shadow Counterstep. The killer released a burst of spiritual energy that threw Shen Yuan against the ravine wall. Poison spread through Shen Yuan's veins, his vision blurred. Qin Rui picked up a sword and attacked to protect him. The assassin kicked the boy into the mud and raised his weapon for the final strike. Shen Yuan crossed the ravine in 3 shadowed steps. He kicked the assassin's wounded leg, forcing him onto one knee. Qin Rui understood the opening and thrust. The blade stopped halfway through the enemy's chest. The killer seized Qin Rui's throat. Shen Yuan gripped the hilt and pushed the sword through the man's heart. Rainwater carried blood down the ravine. Qin Rui stood frozen. It was the first life he had taken. Shen Yuan placed a hand on his shoulder. "You saved me. Fear does not make you weak. Letting fear choose for you does." They searched the bodies. One assassin carried the private token of a servant from Iron Cloud Peak, the branch controlled by Elder Wei Shan. Another carried the symbol of the Burning Claw Gang. Someone wanted the murder to appear like a bandit attack. Shen Yuan and Qin Rui returned to Ashfall Peak before dawn. The peak's main hall leaned to one side. Weeds buried the courtyard and rain passed through the roof. It was poor, but it was still Shen Yuan's home and now Qin Rui's as well. The poison was close to Shen Yuan's heart. Qin Rui produced a clay bottle containing the only spirit-cleansing pill he owned. Shen Yuan broke the pill in half and ordered Qin Rui to swallow one portion because the assassin's blood had touched an open cut on his hand. The boy resisted, but Shen Yuan reminded him that a disciple followed instructions during an emergency. Qin Rui swallowed the half pill. Disciple Qin Rui has absorbed half of a low-grade spirit-cleansing pill. Hundredfold Return activated. Reward 50 low-grade spirit-cleansing pills. Shen Yuan used one of the return pills. The medicine forced dark poison from his body and saved his life. The return was exact. Half a pill had produced 50 pills, 100 times the original value. For the next 2 days, Shen Yuan studied Qin Rui's condition. Spiritual energy was not vanishing from the boy's body. A strange sword-shaped bone beside his heart was consuming it. 9 layers of sealing energy hid the bone from outside detection. Shen Yuan could not safely break the seals, but he could redirect energy around them. He modified the Cloud Sword sect's most basic breathing method and guided Qin Rui through one circulation. The boy failed repeatedly. Pain made his breathing ragged, but he continued until a thread of energy finally reached his dantian and remained there. Disciple Qin Rui has learned a modified cloud breathing cycle. Hundredfold Return activated. Reward 100 Vein Heavenly Cyclone Art, complete first layer. Shen Yuan cultivated the returned art immediately. His dantian became a rotating cyclone that pulled spiritual energy through 100 secondary channels. He broke through from the 3rd to the 6th stage of spirit gathering in a single night. More importantly, the density and purity of his energy surpassed ordinary cultivators at the same realm. He trained Qin Rui for 10 days. The boy practiced 1,000 sword thrusts each morning, movement drills each afternoon, and controlled breathing each night. When Qin Rui learned the basic straight sword, Shen Yuan received the hundredfold severing sword art. When Qin Rui mastered the deflection step, Shen Yuan unlocked the 2nd layer of the 100 shadow counterstep. When Shen Yuan gave him an iron sword, the system returned the falling star sword, a low-grade spiritual weapon worth 100 ordinary blades. Shen Yuan kept the returned treasures hidden. Rapid strength attracted attention, and he was not yet ready to face Elder Wei openly. Attention came anyway. 5 Iron Cloud disciples entered Ashfall Peak without permission. Their leader, Tang Hu, was a broad-shouldered young man at the 7th stage of spirit gathering. He nailed a notice to the damaged training hall. Ashfall Peak would be dissolved in 30 days unless one of its disciples reached the top 10 during the 7-peak trial. Tang Hu called Qin Rui a servant with broken meridians and tried to enter Shen Yuan's cultivation chamber. Qin Rui blocked him. Tang Hu punched. Qin Rui used the deflection step and struck his ribs with a wooden sheath. The attack surprised Tang Hu but could not penetrate his iron hide technique. Tang Hu grabbed the sheath, dragged Qin Rui forward, and drove a knee into his stomach. Shen Yuan warned Tang Hu that if he stepped on Qin Rui, he would leave without that leg. Tang Hu charged with the Iron Bull technique. Shen Yuan shifted diagonally, let Tang Hu adjust, then moved closer instead of retreating. He placed one palm on the disciple's shoulder, one at his waist, and used Tang Hu's momentum to throw him across the courtyard. Tang Hu crashed through the notice he had posted. The other disciples drew their swords, but Shen Yuan's gaze stopped them. They carried Tang Hu away. Qin Rui admitted that he had allowed pride to keep him inside the body cultivator's range after his first attack failed. Shen Yuan assigned 500 movement cycles before sunset. A victory against an intruder did not excuse a training mistake. 3 days later, Master and Disciple entered Black Pine Forest to collect the 3 second-level beast cores required for the 7-peak trial. A pack of Windfang wolves surrounded them in the mist. Shen Yuan deliberately concealed his aura so the wolves would test Qin Rui first. One attacked from behind. Qin Rui blocked its claws but was driven against a tree. A second wolf came from his blind side. He kicked the first into its path, rolled away, and stabbed downward. The blade entered the beast's shoulder and was torn from his hand. 3 more wolves appeared. Qin Rui retreated into a narrow gap between 2 rocks, preventing the pack from surrounding him. He used the stone walls to redirect his movement, broke one wolf's leg against the rock, and recovered his sword. Shen Yuan cut the tendons of 3 beasts with thin sword arcs but left the final kill to his disciple. Qin Rui waited for the wounded wolf to lunge. He stepped aside and drove the blade behind its jaw. The remaining pack retreated. Qin Rui removed his first beast core with shaking hands. Near sunset, they discovered the Burning Claw gang attacking a merchant caravan beneath a cliff. Archers hid in the trees while bandits surrounded 6 exhausted guards. Shen Yuan sent Qin Rui to the ridge and walked openly onto the road. The gang leader, a bald cultivator using a curved chain blade, recognized the supposedly useless elder and announced that Shen Yuan's head was worth 500 spirit stones. The chain blade cut through a tree on its first pass. Shen Yuan stepped beneath it, moved between 3 bandits, broke one man's nose, struck another's throat, and redirected a stolen sword into a 3rd attacker's leg. Qin Rui moved among the hidden archers, cutting bowstrings and forcing them from their positions. The bald leader swallowed a red pill and forced his cultivation from the 9th stage of spirit gathering into the 1st stage of Foundation C. His next attack carved a trench through the road. Shen Yuan drew the falling star sword. The chain formed 3 overlapping arcs. Shen Yuan cut through the first 2. The 3rd wrapped around the spiritual weapon. The leader pulled, expecting to disarm him. Shen Yuan released the hilt and moved forward with a sudden slack. He struck the man's chest with a reversed burst from the heavenly cyclone and launched him through a wagon wheel. Qin Rui placed his sword against the fallen leader's throat. Inside the man's storage pouch, they found a map of the Cloud Sword Sect's Eastern Spirit Mine, guard schedules, and a message carrying Elder Wei's private seal. The Burning Claw gang had been ordered to seize the mine before the Seven Peak trial. A private seal could be stolen and a bandit could lie, so Shen Yuan needed a living witness. He took the gang leader and surviving attackers toward the mine, but smoke was already rising from the eastern valley. The attack had begun early. The mine's outer watchtower was burning. Shen Yuan and Qin Rui entered through a narrow ventilation tunnel. Metallic scratching echoed beneath them. The bandits had disturbed a nest of blood mantises, man-sized beasts with red cutting limbs strong enough to split iron tools. The first mantis dropped from the ceiling, its forelimb shattered Qin Rui's sword. Shen Yuan cut its leg joint with the falling star sword. A second attacked from behind. Qin Rui seized a mining spear, waited until the beast raised both blades and thrust through the soft section beneath its mouth. The mantis trapped the shaft and pulled him closer, but Qin Rui released it, slid beneath the creature, and cut its rear tendons with the broken half of his weapon. They reached the main chamber, where surviving guards defended a wooden platform against bandits and mantises. At the center stood Ren Ba, the true leader of the Burning Claw gang, a third-stage Foundation C cultivator with metal claws fixed over both hands. Elder Wei's chief servant stood beside him. The servant turned pale when he saw Shen Yuan. Ren Ba laughed and admitted Elder Wei had underestimated the young elder. Shen Yuan ordered Qin Rui to free the guards. Ren Ba attacked with burning claw arcs. Shen Yuan blocked the first, but the second cut across his ribs. Ren Ba's strength and speed surpassed him. Shen Yuan retreated across a narrow wooden bridge while each claw strike removed sections of railing and floor. Ren Ba trapped the falling star sword between his claws, dragged Shen Yuan forward, and drove a knee into his stomach. He headbutted Shen Yuan and threw him through the railing. Shen Yuan caught the lower beam with one hand. Below him, mantises tore apart fallen bandits. Ren Ba stepped on his fingers. Qin Rui was surrounded by 4 attackers. He redirected a spear into one bandit, kicked another's knee, jumped from the man's shoulder, and landed beside a loaded minecart. He cut its restraining rope. The cart rolled down the track and smashed into the bridge support. Ren Ba lost balance. Shen Yuan dropped to the lower beam and cut through the weakened pillar. The bridge collapsed. Ren Ba jumped towards solid ground. Shen Yuan kicked from falling timber and intercepted him in midair. Both landed on opposite sides of the chamber. Ren Ba released a burning beast technique. Shen Yuan deliberately moved beneath water leaking from the ceiling. He used the heavenly cyclone to pull spirit stone dust into the wet air. When Ren Ba's flames entered the suspended cloud, the dust ignited. The explosion surrounded Ren Ba with his own fire and cracked his protective aura. Shen Yuan crossed the blast with the 100 shadow counterstep. Ren Ba still managed to cut his shoulder. Shen Yuan accepted the wound, entered the shorter range of the claws, and stabbed the falling star sword beneath Ren Ba's ribs. Ren Ba trapped the blade and claimed Shen Yuan remained too weak. Shen Yuan called for Qin Rui. The boy pushed another loaded minecart from the upper track. It struck Ren Ba from behind. His grip broke. Shen Yuan turned the sword upward and pierced his heart. The surviving bandits surrendered. Elder Wei's servant attempted to flee, but Qin Rui stopped him. Before the mine guards and sect investigators, the servant confessed that Wei Shan had funded the Burning Claw gang, arranged Shen Yuan's assassination, and ordered the mine attack. Elder Wei denied everything when they returned to the sect. Then the captured servant repeated the confession before Sect Master Han Qing and the Council of Peaks. The records seal, captured bandits, and surviving guards supported him. Wei Shan avoided immediate execution by revealing a protection order from the Iron Mountain sect. If the Cloud Sword sect killed him before a regional tribunal, Iron Mountain would declare war. Wei Shan was confined to his peak. Before leaving the council chamber, he told Shen Yuan that underestimating him once did not mean it would happen again. That evening, Qin Rui placed 3 beast cores on the table and asked whether he could reach the top 10 in the coming trial. Shen Yuan placed Ren Ba's undamaged metal claw beside them. No, you will take first place. Disciple Qin Rui has completed his first life and death mission under the host's guidance. Hundredfold Return activated. Reward 100 battle insights. 100 versions of the mind battle unfolded inside Shen Yuan's mind. He saw every mistake, missed opening, and possible counter. When he opened his eyes, his understanding of combat had transformed. The 7-peak trial would begin in 5 days. Elder Wei was trapped but not defeated. Iron Mountain was watching. The sword-shaped bone inside Qin Rui had begun responding to the falling star sword. Far beneath the Cloud Sword sect, an ancient gate carved with a black sun slowly opened its first eye. The 7-peak trial began beneath a clear morning sky. Thousands of disciples surrounded the central arena, while 7 stone platforms represented the 7 branches of the Cloud Sword sect. Ashfall Peak's platform had remained empty for 6 years. This time Shen Yuan sat upon it alone while Qin Rui waited among 80 competitors. The first stage was the Chain Forest, a suspended course of swinging bridges, rotating beams, hidden arrows, and zones of crushing spiritual pressure. Only the first 40 disciples would advance. At the signal, nearly every competitor rushed forward. Qin Rui waited. The first group triggered the traps, revealing the rhythm of the rotating platforms and arrow volleys. Then he moved. Tang Hu reached the same bridge and cut its support rope as Qin Rui crossed. The bridge twisted. Qin Rui drove his practice blade into the wood and hung beneath it. Tang Hu stepped on his hand and said Shen Yuan could not interfere this time. Qin Rui released his grip, caught the lower rope, swung beneath the bridge, and kicked Tang Hu onto a rotating platform. Tang Hu nearly fell into the safety net. Both recovered and reached the final wall of compressed spiritual pressure. Tang Hu used his body cultivation to force a path. Qin Rui followed in the wake created behind him and passed at the final moment. Qin Rui finished 7th. Tang Hu finished 8th. Disciple Qin Rui has applied the deflection step to environmental movement. Hundredfold Return activated. Reward 100 Shadow Counterstep, complete 3rd layer. The duel stage began that afternoon. Qin Rui's first opponent was Bao Lei, a massive body cultivator whose ironstone body made his skin resemble gray rock. Bao Lei's opening punch bent Qin Rui's sword and threw him backward. A second punch struck the arena and created a crater. Qin Rui's blade bounced from Bao Lei's ribs. He could not cut the protected skin, so he changed targets. He attacked Bao Lei's face, forced the larger disciple to raise both arms, then struck the ground beside his foot. Stone fragments flew into Bao Lei's eyes. Qin Rui used the sword hilt against his ear, moved behind him, and hit the back of the same knee 5 times. The repeated impacts disrupted the protective energy around the joint. Bao Lei's leg bent, and Qin Rui used his sheath beneath the man's chin to pull him outside the boundary. His second opponent was He Xian from Venom Peak. She wielded a segmented whip coated in numbing poison. The whip curved around Qin Rui's sword and cut his cheek before he could measure its full range. Qin Rui could not approach through the overlapping arcs. He watched He Xian's left wrist and discovered the small rotation preceding every attack. On the 6th strike he threw his sword. She deflected it, but the weapon hid his advance. Qin Rui stepped on the extended whip and trapped it against the ground. He Xian released the handle and drew poison needles. One passed Qin Rui's eye. The second entered his shoulder, numbing his arm. She kicked him and reached for her whip. Qin Rui caught her ankle with his stiff left arm, used her movement to turn her over his hip and placed the edge of his hand against her throat. Shen Yuan gave him a detoxifying pill after the victory. The system returned 100 pills, but Shen Yuan focused on the mistake. You threw away your weapon to enter her range. If she had carried a hidden dagger, you would have died. Victory does not erase a mistake. Qin Rui bowed and accepted the lesson. The quarterfinal placed him against Lan Yue, the former first disciple of Blazing Spear Peak. She was 17, tall and athletic, with dark auburn hair tied high and a long red spear across her shoulders. 2 years earlier, she had been called one of the sect's greatest talents. Then her fire meridians reversed during a breakthrough. Every use of spiritual energy burned her from within. Her cultivation had fallen from the 9th to the 7th stage of spirit gathering, and her own master had stopped providing medicine. The audience expected Qin Rui to win quickly. Shen Yuan did not. Lan Yue's first spear thrust crossed the arena before Qin Rui completed his opening step. He blocked, but the impact nearly tore the sword from his hand. The spear shaft struck his ribs, then the blade changed direction in the middle of his evasion and cut his side. Lan Yue controlled distance with years of experience. Dust failed because she spun her weapon and cleared the air. Attacks against the shaft failed because she used the sliding contact to strike with the rear end. Qin Rui was forced to retreat. Lan Yue gathered fire at the spear tip. Pain tightened her expression. She thrust and the arena exploded. Qin Rui escaped the center, but the blast threw him backward. Lan Yue coughed blood, her hand trembled. Qin Rui could have attacked while she was down. He waited. She accused him of pitying her. I am waiting for you to stand. Lan Yue rose and stopped using spiritual energy. Spear and sword collided 20 times. Her technique remained superior. Qin Rui stopped aiming for her body and struck the same point on the wooden shaft repeatedly. When the crack became dangerous, Lan Yue changed her grip. Qin Rui entered the opening. She released the spear with one hand and struck his chest with her palm. Qin Rui accepted the blow, trapped her arm, and placed his sword beside her neck. Her cracked spear pointed at his heart, but the judges determined Qin Rui's edge would have arrived first. As Lan Yue left the arena, the elder of Blazing Spear Peak announced that she had embarrassed the branch and should not return to his platform. She walked toward the exit alone. Shen Yuan stood. Lan Yue, I can repair your reversed meridians. Several elders laughed because the sect's best healers had failed. Lan Yue asked what he wanted. Become my disciple. If I fail, you may leave. She crossed the arena and bowed 3 times. Qualified disciple registered. Current disciples 2 of 2. Shen Yuan used an ordinary cold river needle and a corrective breathing cycle to redirect the reversed flame. For the first time in 2 years, Lan Yue circulated energy without burning her heart. Disciple Lan Yue has benefited from a cold river needle and corrective guidance. Hundredfold Return activated. Reward 9 Phoenix Meridian NEDLES. The return needles gave Shen Yuan a real path to restore her. The semifinal used a 2-person team format. Jinrui and Lan Yue were paired against Tang Hu and Gu Jian, Elder Wei's 2 strongest disciples. Gu Jian was a quiet 9th stage cultivator carrying a broad black sword. Tang Hu had forced himself to the 9th stage with strengthening medicine. Gu Jian's heavy sword attacked Jinrui with mountain-like pressure. Tang Hu charged Lan Yue and trapped her spear shaft. She released the weapon, stepped onto it, and kicked his jaw, but his iron hide barely reacted. Jinrui and Lan Yue separated from their opponents for one breath. Your opponent is too strong for you, Lan Yue said. So is yours. They switched. Lan Yue's speed disrupted Gu Jian's heavy sword. Jinrui drew Tang Hu toward Gu Jian's attack line. When Gu Jian swung, Jinrui stepped aside and made the heavy blade strike Tang Hu's shoulder. The impact cracked the iron hide. Lan Yue thrust into the damaged area and Jinrui attacked the same wound. Together they forced Tang Hu outside the boundary. Gu Jian released his full aura. A dark mountain image formed around his sword and threw both Ashfall disciples backward. Jinrui charged directly. Gu Jian raised the heavy blade. Lan Yue threw her spear, forcing him to redirect. Jinrui jumped onto the flat of Gu Jian's sword. When Gu Jian lifted it to throw him away, Jinrui used the movement to leap higher. Lan Yue caught her rebounding spear and struck Gu Jian's legs with the shaft. His stance broke. Jinrui descended behind him and placed a blade against his neck. Ashfall Peak had reached the final. The final never began. As Jinrui and Lan Yue entered the arena, the earth shook. A black symbol appeared beneath the central platform. An ancient gate below the sect opened and dark light swallowed 14 competitors. Shen Yuan jumped from his platform, but a barrier rose from the ground. Jinrui, Lan Yue, and the others vanished beneath the arena. Elder Wei stood calmly. The Moonfall secret realm has opened. Sect Master Han Qing demanded to know how a gate sealed for 3 centuries had activated during the trial. Wei Shan smiled. Perhaps it was waiting for today. Inside the secret realm, Jinrui awoke beneath a broken stone moon. Gray sand covered ruined streets. A black sun hung in the sky without producing heat. Lan Yue lay nearby. 20 armored stone puppets rose from the ground and attacked in a disciplined formation. The first line carried shields. The second thrust spears through the gaps. Jinrui's sword could not penetrate the shields. Lan Yue's spear attacks against the legs failed because the puppets felt no pain. They split directions, forcing the formation to widen. Jinrui ran up a shield and jumped behind the first line. Several puppets turned. Lan Yue drove her spear into the newly opened center and released fire through cracks in the sand. The ground exploded, disrupting the formation. Jinrui cut neck joints while Lan Yue shattered knees. They destroyed all 20. A black crystal inside the final puppet reacted to the sealed bone in Jinrui's chest. A path opened toward Mirror Lake. At the lake's center floated a platform holding a black sword fragment. Beneath the silver water slept a 3rd-level moon mirror serpent, a beast with strength comparable to Foundation C. Jinrui entered the water using a hollow reed while Lan Yue distracted the serpent from the shore. He reached the platform, but the moment he touched the fragment, the lake froze and the serpent attacked. Its tail destroyed the stone beneath him. Lan Yue heated the shore and filled the lake with steam. Jinrui hid beneath floating debris. When the serpent passed, he stabbed under one scale with the black fragment. The beast's tail struck him from the water. Lan Yue caught his arm with her spear shaft. The serpent opened its jaws. Jinrui threw the black fragment into its mouth. Lan Yue struck the metal with concentrated flame. Heat exploded inside the beast's throat. It crashed onto the shore, wounded but alive. Lan Yue's reversed meridians flared, dropping her to one knee. The serpent lunged. Jinrui blocked its fang with an iron sword, which broke. He seized the fragment from its jaw. The sword-shaped bone in his chest pulsed, surrounding his arm with black energy. He drove the fragment through the serpent's eye. The first seal around the hidden bone cracked. Elsewhere, Elder Wei met a red-robed envoy beside an ancient altar. Tang Hu and Gu Jian had been drawn there deliberately. The envoy wore a smiling demon mask and carried the pressure of a golden core cultivator. Tang Hu asked why his master was inside the secret realm. Wei Shan answered by stabbing him through the heart. Tang Hu's blood flowed into the altar. Gu Jian stepped back in horror. You served your purpose, Wei Shan said. The envoy wanted Jinrui's hidden inheritance. Wei Shan wanted a black key stored beneath the altar. Blood channels began forcing every surviving competitor toward them. Jinrui and Lan Yue found Su Lion and Bao Lei fighting blood-controlled corpses. The bodies had once belonged to Cloud Sword disciples. Qin Rui cut tendons, Bao Lei broke spines, Su Lion froze the blood threads controlling the dead, Lan Yue burned the threads away. Near the altar they found Gu Jian covered in Tang Hu's blood. Qin Rui did not trust him, but Gu Jian warned that Wei Shan had killed his own disciple and would sacrifice everyone else. Red chains erupted from the ground. The masked envoy descended and introduced himself as Luo Yan, Red Vein Envoy of the Blood Furnace Palace. His first stage golden core pressure forced the disciples to their knees. Luo Yan revealed that Qin Rui's condition was the heaven-devouring sword bone. It consumed sword intent and spiritual energy, allowing its owner to cut through realm differences once fully awakened. Qin Rui's clan had sealed it to hide him. Blood chains attacked. Lan Yue cut one but two wrapped around her arms. Bao Lei tried to break them and lost strength as the blood entered his skin. Su Lion froze the floor but Luo Yan shattered the ice with one step. Gu Jian attacked from behind. Luo Yan caught the heavy blade with two fingers, broke it, and struck Gu Jian through a pillar. Qin Rui attacked with the sword fragment and cut the edge of Luo Yan's mask. The envoy responded by releasing his full golden core aura. Qin Rui's bones cracked under the pressure. Luo Yan seized his throat and raised the blood furnace from beneath the altar. Above the secret realm, sect elders failed to break the sealed gate. Shen Yuan examined the linked symbols using the battle insights. Striking one caused the others to reinforce it. Instead, he used the heavenly cyclone to pull energy from each symbol in sequence. Sect Master Hinching attacked the opposite side at the moment the barrier attempted to replenish itself. The gate broke. Shen Yuan entered alone and followed his connection to his disciples. At the altar, Luo Yan began extracting the sword bone. Black light emerged from Qin Rui's chest. Lan Yue forced Phoenix fire through her damaged meridians, burning herself to escape the chains. She attacked with her spear. Luo Yan blocked, but her strike loosened his hold. Gu Jian, Bao Lei, and Su Lion attacked together. For one moment, 4 wounded disciples restrained a golden core cultivator. Luo Yan released a blood shockwave and threw them across the ruins. He raised his hand to kill Lan Yue. A silver sword line crossed the altar and forced him back. Shen Yuan landed beside his disciples. Lan Yue told him he had taken too long. Shen Yuan told her she had damaged her meridians again. Neither had time to argue further. Luo Yan recognized Shen Yuan as the inheritor of the Hundredfold Tao. He claimed the system belonged to the Blood Furnace Palace. His blood spear cut Shen Yuan's side even when Shen Yuan used the counterstep. Golden Core spiritual perception could follow the movement technique. The falling star sword cracked when it blocked the next thrust. Shen Yuan used the altar pillars to restrict the spear's reach. Luo Yan destroyed them. Falling stone filled the area. Shen Yuan crossed the debris, striking wrists and joints, but the blood armor around Luo Yan stopped every attack. The spear struck Shen Yuan's back and threw him beside Qin Rui. Luo Yan said Shen Yuan had received techniques he had not earned and would now watch the palace reclaim the inheritance. Shen Yuan placed the cracked falling star sword in Qin Rui's hand. Remember the first lesson I taught you. Watch the chest, not the weapon. That was the instruction. What was the lesson? Qin Rui looked at the wounded disciples who had protected him. A sword exists to choose what reaches the people behind it. The heaven-devouring sword bone awakened. Disciple Qin Rui has comprehended the first principle of the guardian sword DAO. Hundredfold Return activated. Reward: Primordial Hundredfold Sword Heart. A sword-shaped light formed inside Shen Yuan's soul. Every sword technique he knew became completely understood rather than merely remembered. Luo Yan attacked immediately. His blood spear divided into 30 killing shadows. Shen Yuan's first strike broke 1, his second broke 3. The third created a silver circle that erased the remaining shadows. Qin Rui blocked the real spear with the falling star sword. The spiritual weapon shattered, but the attack stopped. Lan Yue struck Luo Yan's left shoulder. Gu Jian attacked his right side. Bao Lei anchored his leg. Su Lion froze the blood armor. Shen Yuan formed 2 fingers into a sword. Hundredfold severing sword, first truth, cut the flame, cut the vessel, cut the man. A silver line passed through the blood furnace image, through Luo Yan's spear and across his chest. His armor split. He fell before the altar. Wei Shan appeared from a hidden passage, took the black key and stabbed the dying envoy through the back. Then he escaped while the secret realm began collapsing. Shen Yuan could not chase him while the disciples remained trapped. He carried Qin Rui. Bao Lei lifted Gu Jian. Lan Yue and Su Lion supported each other. They escaped as the altar and Black Sun broke apart behind them. The surviving competitors returned to the sect. Tang Hu was dead. Elder Wei had fled. The official tournament had no final match, but Han Qing declared Qin Rui and Lan Yue joint champions because they had saved the other disciples. The Qi Wei Shan had stolen controlled the blood furnace beneath the Cloud Sword sect's original mountain formation. If activated, it could consume the blood and cultivation of everyone within the barrier. Iron Mountain sect troops gathered beyond the northern valley. Blood Furnace Palace envoys entered the region. War was no longer a threat, it was approaching. Shen Yuan used the 9 Phoenix Meridian Needles to begin repairing Lan Yue. He taught her a new circulation path using short, controlled bursts of flame. When she completed the first cycle, the system returned the 100 Sun Phoenix scripture. Shen Yuan broke into the first stage of Foundation C. That night, thousands of torches appeared across the northern mountains. Iron Mountain sect attacked before sunrise. Their army contained 600 cultivators, twice the number defending the Cloud Sword sect. 30 armored spirit beasts climbed the mountain paths. 5 spiritual cannons waited across the valley. Blood Furnace Palace specialists stood among the formation masters. At the center of the enemy host stood Patriarch Luo Shu, master of the regional Blood Furnace Palace. He wore layered crimson armor and 9 blood rings floated behind him. He had reached the 9th stage of Golden Core, 1 step beneath Soul Palace. Wei Shan stood beside him holding the key to the furnace beneath the mountain. Sect Master Han Qing activated the Cloud Sword Barrier. A blue dome covered all 7 peaks. The first cannon volley created ripples, the second opened cracks, the third shattered the northern section. Armored beasts charged through the opening. A stonehorn rhinoceros taller than a house struck the outer gate. Arrows bounced from the iron plates covering its body. Shen Yuan stood on the wall and ordered the earth cultivators to soften the ground beneath its front feet. The creature sank and lost momentum. Sword disciples attacked the unarmored joints. Qin Rui jumped from the gate and struck behind its front leg with black sword bone energy. Lan Yue drove her spear into the same opening and sent controlled phoenix fire through the metal armor. The beast collapsed before reaching the second gate. Crimson apes used chains to scale the walls. The first ape's fist pushed Qin Rui across the battlement. A second jumped from above. Lan Yue slid beneath it and drove her spear into its stomach. The ape seized the shaft and lifted her from the ground. She sent fire through the weapon, forcing it to release her. Qin Rui cut behind its knee and Lan Yue pierced its throat. 3 more apes surrounded them. Qin Rui guarded high attacks while Lan Yue controlled the space around their legs. When an ape jumped, Qin Rui redirected it toward her spear. When one moved low, Lan Yue forced it toward his sword energy. Their movements began to form a shared rhythm. Disciples Qin Rui and Lan Yue have developed basic cooperative combat. Hundredfold Return activated. Reward 100 Paths Unity Formation incomplete. The incomplete formation could combine incompatible energies, but only while the participants maintained perfect trust and timing. The war divided across the mountain. At the Eastern Chain Bridge, Poison Hall cultivators released green fog. Lan Yue led 20 disciples to defend the route. Their commander Duzai wielded 2 serpent whips that sprayed poison from every movement. Lan Yue ordered the defenders to wet cloth and cover their faces. She created a rising current of heated air that pushed the poison above the bridge. Duzai attacked through the remaining mist. 1 whip wrapped around Lan Yue's spear. The second curved behind her and cut her side. Lan Yue released the spear, ducked, and caught the second whip beneath her arm. Poison thorns entered her skin. Duzai pulled, dragging her forward. Lan Yue used the movement to kick Duzai's knee. The commander stepped aside and struck her with an elbow. Lan Yue hit the bridge ropes. A whip wrapped around her neck. Duzai reminded her that she had once been called a genius. Lan Yue gripped the chain. I still am. She released Phoenix fire through the metal links. Duzai dropped the burning handle. Lan Yue pulled the whip from her neck, wrapped it around a bridge support, and kicked through a damaged rope. The bridge tilted, throwing several Poison Hall cultivators into the ravine. Duzai jumped toward solid ground. Lan Yue threw her spear. It passed through the commander's robe and pinned her to the gate. Duzai cut herself free and released poison needles. Lan Yue spun the captured whip, deflected them, closed the distance, and drove her palm into Duzai's chest. Controlled Phoenix fire entered the poison meridians. Duzai's own toxins ignited. She collapsed and the eastern bridge remained in Cloud Sword hands. At the western stairs, Qin Rui fought beside Gu Jian, whose heavy sword had been broken in the secret realm. They faced Cao Meng, Wei Shan's new chief disciple, and a second-stage Foundation C cultivator wearing Iron Mountain armor. Cao Meng broke Gu Jian's borrowed sword with 1 strike. Qin Rui intercepted the next attack, but the difference in cultivation pushed him down several stairs. His sword fragment failed to penetrate the armor. Cao Meng kicked him through a stone railing. Gu Jian attacked with the broken weapon. Cao Meng caught it and stabbed him in the side. Qin Rui noticed a narrow armor gap beneath Cao Meng's right arm. He attacked the left side repeatedly to make the captain reinforce it. Gu Jian understood and struck the right shoulder with his broken sword, forcing the gap open. Qin Rui drove black sword energy beneath the arm. Cao Meng trapped his wrist and struck his chest with the execution blade's handle. Qin Rui lost the fragment. Cao Meng raised his weapon. Gu Jian moved between them. The blade cut through his shoulder and destroyed the tendons of his sword arm. Qin Rui caught him. Gu Jian said he once believed a master's orders mattered more than deciding whether they were right. Qin Rui placed the sword fragment in his left hand. Then decide now. Qin Rui seized the heavy execution blade. Gu Jian attacked rapidly with the fragment, controlling Cao Meng's attention. Qin Rui dragged the heavy weapon along the ground to hide its direction. When Cao Meng knocked Gu Jian aside, Qin Rui rotated his entire body and struck the damaged armor gap. The execution blade cut through Cao Meng's chest. Gu Jian survived, but his right arm would never hold a sword again. Qin Rui carried him to the healers and returned to the gate. By midday, the defenders had stopped the first assault. Then Wei Shan activated the blood furnace key. A red pillar rose from beneath Central Cloud Peak. The protective barrier changed color. Instead of shielding the sect, it trapped everyone inside. Blood energy began flowing from wounded bodies into the mountain. The dead dried within seconds. The furnace was feeding. Luo Shu entered through the barrier. Sect Master Han Qing and 4 peak elders attacked him in the sky. Han Qing released the Cloud Sword domain, surrounding Luo Shu with thousands of blue sword images. The other elders added fire, wind, ice, and metal techniques. Luo Shu expanded the first blood ring into a red wall. The combined attack cracked it but failed to break through. His second ring released chains that passed through the elders' defenses and pulled spiritual energy from their bodies. Han Qing cut his chain, the others could not. Luo Shu dragged one elder forward and shattered the man's golden core with a palm strike. The stolen cultivation entered the rings behind him. Shen Yuan understood that fighting Luo Shu directly was impossible while the furnace continued to feed him. He ordered Qin Rui and Lan Yue to protect the lower district, where enemy assassins would target wounded disciples. Then he entered the tunnels beneath the sect. The blood furnace chamber was carved inside the mountain. Thousands of red channels connected a vast bronze vessel to all 7 peaks. Wei Shan stood before it. The key floated over the central flame. Wei Shan said the sect was already dying and that he had only chosen the winning side. Shen Yuan accused him of murdering his own disciples and selling everyone who trusted him. Wei Shan released the pressure of a 5th stage Foundation C cultivator. Blood energy from the furnace continued strengthening him. His black sword produced 3 mountain-shaped arcs. Shen Yuan cut through the first. The second forced him sideways. The third struck his shoulder and threw him into a furnace channel. Blood energy entered the wound and tried to pull out his cultivation. Shen Yuan reversed the heavenly cyclone and absorbed part of the attacking energy. Wei Shan formed a seal. Blood chains emerged from the walls and trapped Shen Yuan's legs. Wei Shan's sword pierced his side. A kick cracked Shen Yuan's knee. Wei Shan claimed Shen Yuan had received techniques he had never earned and therefore fought like a talented child. Shen Yuan admitted the criticism was partly true. Then he struck the furnace channel rather than Wei Shan. Sword energy traveled through the bloodline and emerged from the floor behind the traitor. Wei Shan avoided a fatal strike, but his leg was cut. Shen Yuan used the counterstep despite the damaged knee. He appeared on Wei Shan's right, changed behind him, then returned to the front. Wei Shan attacked a shadow. Shen Yuan struck his wrist and knocked away the black sword. Wei Shan punched. Shen Yuan accepted the blow, caught his arm, and used the heavenly cyclone to pull stolen blood energy through their contact. Wei Shan broke free with a headbutt. Both men staggered. Wei Shan seized the furnace key and released the full pressure of the formation into the chamber. A river of blood energy struck Shen Yuan. The heavenly cyclone expanded, but his meridians began tearing because his body could not contain the power. The furnace carried 7 spiritual properties from the 7 peaks: fire, metal, water, wind, earth, wood, and sword intent. Shen Yuan activated the incomplete 100 Paths Unity formation inside his own body. The energy separated into different meridians rather than destroying one another. His skin cracked and blood leaked from his eyes, but he remained alive. He walked through the river of power. Wei Shan met him with bare hands. They exchanged strikes beside the furnace. Wei Shan broke Shen Yuan's ribs. Shen Yuan shattered Wei Shan's shoulder. Wei Shan kicked the damaged knee and nearly dropped him. Shen Yuan used the furnace wall to remain standing and drove the black sword through Wei Shan's stomach. Wei Shan seized his throat and said Shen Yuan could not kill him without losing the key. Shen Yuan cut the channels connecting the furnace to all 7 peaks. The key cracked. The feeding stopped. Wei Shan stared at the broken formation. He had sacrificed everything for power he would never control. Shen Yuan pulled the sword upward through his chest. Before dying, Wei Shan whispered that he could have ruled all 7 peaks. Shen Yuan answered, "You could not even protect one disciple." Above the mountain, Luo Shu sensed the furnace stop. The blood rings began losing power. Han Qing attacked and shattered the 3rd ring, but Luo Shu struck him from the sky. The sect master crashed into Central Cloud Peak. The enemy launched its final assault. Blood furnace assassins entered the lower district through hidden tunnels and attacked healers and wounded children. Qin Rui intercepted the first group inside a narrow corridor. Limited space prevented them from surrounding him. He trapped one blade against the wall, struck the attacker's throat, and forced another enemy into Lan Yue's spear. A 3rd assassin released poison needles. Qin Rui lowered his head. Lan Yue spun her spear and deflected most, but one entered Qin Rui's back and numbed his right arm. The assassins attacked his weak side. Qin Rui switched the fragment to his damaged left hand. He could not use normal sword forms, so he shortened his movements and used the fragment like a knife, trapping wrists and cutting joints. Lan Yue remained one step behind him. When his weak arm failed, her spear intercepted. When enemies moved outside her range, Qin Rui forced them inward. The final assassin detonated a blood talisman. Qin Rui threw himself over an injured child. Lan Yue formed a phoenix fire shield. The explosion destroyed the corridor, but both disciples remained standing. Disciples Qin Rui and Lan Yue have completed the second level of cooperative combat. They have learned to compensate for each other's weaknesses. Hundredfold Return activated. Reward 100 Paths Unity Formation complete. Shen Yuan received the complete formation while climbing from the mountain tunnels. Luo Shu descended into the central courtyard. Only 6 blood rings remained, but his 9th stage golden core cultivation still surpassed everyone in the sect. Qin Rui and Lan Yue attacked together. Black Sword Energy and Phoenix Fire broke 3 blood chains. The remaining chains wrapped around them and dragged them across the stone. Shen Yuan entered the courtyard and cut the chains. His clothes were soaked with blood, one leg dragged behind him, and his breathing was shallow. Luo Shu identified him as the Hundredfold Inheritor and revealed that the first master who possessed the system had raised 9 disciples to the Heavenly Gate realm. Those disciples had nearly destroyed the Blood Furnace Palace before eventually betraying their master. Qin Rui said they were not true disciples. Lan Yue said loyalty had survived pain between them. Luo Shu released all 6 remaining rings. Each formed a different weapon: a spear, sword, hammer, bow, chain, and furnace. The weapons attacked simultaneously. Shen Yuan pushed his disciples apart. The hammer destroyed the ground. Qin Rui blocked the sword and lost the fragment. Lan Yue deflected the spear, but the chain wrapped around her waist. Shen Yuan cut it and was struck through the shoulder by the blood arrow. The furnace descended from above and crushed the central courtyard after the 3 barely escaped. The weapons attacked in groups of 3 while the others reformed. Destroying the manifestations achieved nothing. The rings themselves were the source. Qin Rui moved toward the sword ring. Lan Yue targeted the spear ring. Shen Yuan pulled the chain weapon into the descending furnace. The 2 blood energies interfered. Qin Rui ran along the chain. Luo Shu sent the blood sword toward him. Lan Yue threw her spear and forced the weapons to collide. Qin Rui reached the furnace ring and struck it with sword bone energy. A crack appeared. Luo Shu recalled all weapons and released a blood shockwave. Qin Rui struck a wall. Lan Yue fell beside Shen Yuan. The patriarch appeared before Qin Rui and drove his fingers into the area around the sword bone. He began extracting it. Shen Yuan attacked. Luo Shu blocked his sword with one hand and kicked him away. Lan Yue's spear struck the patriarch's back, but the golden core armor stopped it. A blood chain smashed her across the court. Shen Yuan looked at his disciples and activated the complete unity formation. Lan Yue circulated Phoenix Fire into him. The formation prevented it from burning his meridians. He added Heavenly Cyclone Energy and extended the connection to Qin Rui. He told Qin Rui to pull the sword bone inward. Luo Shu was pulling outward. The opposing forces opened the deepest seal. A black sword image rose from Qin Rui's chest and began consuming the blood energy around the patriarch's hand. Luo Shu tried to release him, but Qin Rui caught his wrist. Lan Yue connected her spear energy. Shen Yuan added the primordial sword heart. 3 cultivation paths became 1. Disciples have fully mastered cooperative combat under the host's guidance. Hundredfold Return activated. Reward 100 Paths Heaven Sealing Domain. Vast formation appeared beneath the Cloud Sword sect. 100 lines spread across all 7 peaks. Every surviving disciple felt the connection. Shen Yuan did not steal their power. He created a path through which they could willingly combine it. Sword cultivators raised their weapons. Healers released purified energy. Fire, water, earth, wind, metal, wood, poison, and body refinement cultivators added their strength. Hundreds of incompatible techniques entered the domain without destroying one another. Luo Shu released his full golden core. A gigantic blood furnace formed above the sect. If I cannot take the sword bone, I will refine everyone here. The furnace descended. Shen Yuan stood at the center of the domain. Qin Rui stood to his right. Lan Yue stood to his left. Qin Rui raised the guardian sword. Lan Yue raised the rebirth flame. Shen Yuan formed a silver blade from the combined strength of the sect. The blood furnace struck the domain. The outer mountain shattered. Buildings collapsed. Every defender felt the pressure enter their bones. Shen Yuan's damaged body began breaking because he had to guide all 100 energy paths. Luo Shu forced the furnace lower. The sky turned red. Qin Rui offered to become the center of the formation. Shen Yuan refused because Qin Rui's body could not contain it. Shen Yuan remembered every return he had received. None had appeared because he trained alone. Every power existed because a disciple learned first. He asked Qin Rui to repeat the meaning of his first lesson. See the choice before the attack. He asked Lan Yue what she learned when her spear failed. My path is not stored inside a weapon. Furnace was only Luo Shu's weapon. The remaining blood rings inside his body were the choice. Shen Yuan targeted the rings. The 100 shadow counterstep spread his spiritual presence across 100 points in the domain. Luo Shu could not identify the true center. Shen Yuan compressed the domain into 6 separate sword lines. The first forced Luo Shu to block with the furnace. The second struck the sword ring from behind. Qin Rui sent heaven-devouring energy through the crack and collapsed it. The third and fourth lines attacked together. Luo Shu redirected the hammer and chain. Lan Yue sent Phoenix fire through the chain and burned the seal inside its ring. 2 more rings broke. Luo Shu roared and absorbed the last rings into his body. His cultivation briefly crossed beyond Golden Core. A soul palace shadow formed behind him. He punched the domain and split the western peak. A second strike broke multiple formation lines. Then he appeared before Shen Yuan and drove a fist into his stomach. Qin Rui attacked the patriarch's neck. Luo Shu caught him and slammed him into the ground. Lan Yue stabbed his back. He broke the spear and struck her chest. Luo Shu seized Shen Yuan by the throat and said he had raised his disciples only to watch them die. Shen Yuan looked at Qin Rui and Lan Yue. Both were wounded. Both were trying to stand. Neither had retreated. No. I raised them so they would never need to kneel. Shen Yuan released control of the domain. Luo Shu smiled, believing he had won. Then the domain divided. Half entered Qin Rui and half entered Lan Yue. Shen Yuan kept nothing. This was not a system transaction. It was a master trusting his disciples. Qin Rui's sword bone absorbed the sword paths. Lan Yue's phoenix scripture transformed the elemental paths into rebirth fire. They rose together. Qin Rui attacked first. Luo Shu blocked, but the heaven-devouring energy consumed the blood armor around his arm. Lan Yue followed with a spear formed from phoenix flame. It entered the opening Qin Rui created and exploded the remaining armor. Shen Yuan used the last of his strength to pull Luo Shu closer with the heavenly cyclone. The patriarch tried to retreat. Qin Rui caught one arm. Lan Yue trapped the other with her fire spear. Shen Yuan formed 2 fingers into a sword. The primordial sword heart released one final line. Hundredfold severing sword, final truth. A master's strength is measured by those who stand after he falls. The silver line entered Luo Shu's chest and split his golden core. His soul palace shadow shattered. The final blood rings collapsed. Before dying, Luo Shu warned that every blood furnace palace in the upper continent would come for the hundredfold inheritance. Shen Yuan released him. Then I will need more disciples. The enemy army retreated after seeing its patriarch fall. The Cloud Sword sect survived, but victory carried a heavy price. More than 100 disciples had died. 3 peak elders were gone. 2 mountain branches were badly damaged. The outer gate had been destroyed. The blood furnace beneath the sect was gone forever. Shen Yuan remained unconscious for 12 days. When he awakened, Qin Rui slept beside the door with the black sword fragment across his knees. Lan Yue sat by the window, fitting a new shaft to her broken spear. Shen Yuan's cultivation had fallen back to the 9th stage of spirit gathering because of the damage caused by the domain. He had lost raw power, but his techniques, insight, and bonds remained. His disciples helped him into the Ashfall courtyard. More than 60 young cultivators waited beneath the repaired gate. Some were former servants. Some had damaged meridians. Some had lost their masters in the war. Gu Jian stood among them with his right arm in a sling. A child Qin Rui had protected during the assassination attack stood at the front. They bowed together and asked to become disciples of Ashfall Peak. The system appeared. Current disciple limit 2. Upgrade conditions met. Qin Rui has awakened the heaven-devouring sword bone. Lan Yue has completed the first layer of the 100 Sun Phoenix scripture. Both disciples have established independent DAO foundations. Disciple limit increased to 10. Qin Rui said they needed a larger training courtyard. Lan Yue added that they needed another roof. Shen Yuan stepped before the waiting cultivators. Those who enter Ashfall Peak follow 3 rules. First, strength exists to protect your choices, not steal the choices of others. Second, losing a battle is permitted. Refusing to learn from it is not. Third, no disciple of Ashfall Peak will ever be abandoned. The young cultivators bowed. Far above the lower continent, 9 ancient figures opened their eyes inside a palace suspended over red clouds. A shattered blood ring showed them the final image of Shen Yuan standing beside his disciples. One figure ordered a soul palace envoy to descend. The oldest stopped him. The previous hundredfold inheritor had become powerful because he collected followers who depended entirely on him. Shen Yuan was different. Qin Rui and Lan Yue stood beside him, not behind him. He does not collect followers, the old figure said. He creates people capable of standing without him. Back on Ashfall Peak, Shen Yuan heard the system announce that sect development had been unlocked. He dismissed the message, picked up a wooden sword, and threw it to the first new student. The nervous boy admitted he knew nothing. Shen Yuan smiled. Then there is nowhere to begin except the beginning. Sunlight fell across the training courtyard. The weakest elder in the Cloud Sword sect had survived assassination, raised 2 rejected disciples into geniuses, destroyed the blood furnace, and defeated a golden core patriarch. Yet his true journey had only begun. Every person he taught would grow stronger. Everything they learned would return to him 100-fold. Epilogue ASHFALL Snewdawn. During the following weeks, the surviving sect members rebuilt what the war had destroyed. The disciples of Frost River Peak carried water to the burned halls. Iron Cloud survivors moved stone with their bare hands. Venom Peak healers treated people they had once considered rivals. Without the blood furnace hidden beneath them, the 7 peaks felt lighter, as though the mountain itself could finally breathe. Henching visited Ashfall Peak while Shen Yuan was supervising the repair of its wall. The sect master offered him the vacant position of Grand Elder and authority over the surviving combat branches. Shen Yuan refused. He told Han Qing that Ashfall Peak still had broken rooms, injured disciples, and a courtyard too small for the students waiting outside. Those responsibilities mattered more than a higher seat in the council hall. Han Qing accepted the refusal, but he changed one sect law. From that day onward, no peak could reject a candidate solely because of a damaged spiritual root, unusual meridians, physical disability, or poor family background. Every candidate would receive a second examination focused on hidden constitutions and alternative cultivation paths. The rule became known as the Ashfall Measure. Qin Rui began teaching the youngest students the same deflection step he had learned in Corpse Ravine. At first, he repeated Shen Yuan's words exactly. Then he noticed that one child had a weak right knee and changed the stance to protect it. The system did not activate for Shen Yuan because he had not given a new lesson at that moment. He was still satisfied. Qin Rui was beginning to think like a teacher rather than merely imitate one. Lan Yue rebuilt her spear using the metal claw taken from Ren Ba, spirit wood from Black Pine Forest, and a fragment of the chain she had captured from Duzai. She named the weapon Returning Ember. Its design reminded her that defeat, injury, and abandonment had not ended her path. They had become materials for a stronger one. Gu Jian could no longer wield a heavy sword with his right arm, so Shen Yuan introduced him to formation carving. The precision and patience he had developed as a swordsman transferred naturally to the work. For the first time since losing his arm, Gu Jian looked toward the future without seeing only what had been taken from him. On the 30th morning after the war, 10 disciples stood in 2 straight lines beneath the plum tree. Some had talent, some had scars, all had been rejected somewhere else. Shen Yuan looked from one face to another and understood that the Hundredfold System had never been asking him to find perfect students. It was asking whether he could recognize possibility before the rest of the world did. He raised the wooden practice sword. The first lesson of Ashfall Peak began. End of Season 1.